Back at the Galactic Council, the minutes ticked by like hours. A tense atmosphere had settled over the chamber. The reptilian superior, who had first detected the vessel, returned to the screen with more data. It's confirmed. The ship is human. There's no mistake. The room fell silent. The idea of a human warship on the border of galactic space was incomprehensible. There had been no war declared, no official act of aggression. Yet this ship, this towering monument of human ambition, was heading straight for them, and no one knew why. Lord Seleth leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. "Send a communication. Let us see what they want." He turned to one of the officers of the consul, his voice stern. "Prepare the diplomatic fleet, but I want this handled delicately. We have no idea what we're dealing with." As the officer nodded and began preparing the communication, a low murmur of fear spread through the room. The Galactic Council had faced numerous threats throughout the years, but none had ever come from Earth. The humans were a mystery. They had always been too primitive to pose a serious threat, or so everyone thought. Now, it seemed that assumption might be their downfall. Back aboard the human war vessel, the mood was far from diplomatic. Commander Anderson was focused on his mission, unaware of the panic he was stirring in the galaxy. The massive ship continued its slow march toward the galactic border, its course unwavering. He had no intention of negotiating. His mission was clear, and there was no turning back. "Captain," Harper said softly, her voice laced with tension. "They've sent a message." Anderson didn't even flinch. He had been expecting it. "Put it through." A moment later, the screen flickered to life, and a voice, calm, but with an unmistakable authority, spoke from the other side. "This is Lord Seleth of the Galactic Council. We request an explanation for your presence near our borders. You have violated galactic space. State your intentions immediately." Anderson's lips curled into a small smile, his eyes hardening as he spoke into the microphone. "This is Commander Blake Anderson of the United Earth Forces. As of now, our intentions are clear. We've come for what is ours. Get ready to answer for what you've done to my people." The message cut off abruptly, leaving behind a silence that was even more unnerving than before. The council, on the other side of the transmission, exchanged stunned looks. This was not a message of diplomacy. This was a declaration of war. The room filled with chaos. Some representatives screamed for retaliation, while others called for negotiations. But the message had been sent, and there was no going back. Lord Seleth stood at the center of the storm, his face a mask of unreadable emotion. "Prepare the fleet. It's time to show humanity that the galaxy does not bow to threats." But deep inside, a seed of doubt began to grow. Could they truly face this new human force? Had they underestimated the Earthlings for far too long? As the first human warship drew ever closer, the galaxy held its breath, unsure of what was to come, but knowing, deep down, that nothing would ever be the same again. The tension on the bridge of the human warship grew palpable as Commander Blake Anderson stood, his eyes locked on the view screen ahead. The stars seemed to blur past them as the ship continued its steady advance toward the heart of the galaxy, toward the Galactic Council's borders. The silence was deafening, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's systems. No one spoke, but everyone knew that the moment they crossed into galactic space, there would be no turning back. They were no longer a peaceful species, no longer mere survivors. This was war. Lieutenant Sarah Harper, standing just to the side of Anderson, glanced over at him, her eyes filled with both concern and determination. "Captain, the communications were sent. We've made contact with the Galactic Council." Anderson nodded, his expression stoic. "I'm not surprised they responded. They'll either bow down to us, or they'll fight. Either way, Earth will not be ignored anymore." Harper hesitated for a moment before stepping closer, her voice quiet. "Do you think they'll listen, or will they see us as nothing more than a threat to eliminate?" Anderson met her gaze, his voice low but steady. "We don't have a choice. They've left us no choice. We will show them what humanity is capable of." His words hung in the air, the weight of them settling on the entire crew. There was no room for hesitation now, no time for doubt. They had fought for this moment, and now it was here. The massive warship, an advanced creation of humanity's own making, was designed for this very purpose. Over the years, Earth had built it in secret. Every aspect of its design was tailored for conflict, for survival, and for asserting humanity's place among the stars. The ship's weapon systems were unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. Their technology was far beyond what anyone could have predicted, and it was about to make its presence known. Commander Anderson walked over to the tactical console, his eyes scanning the data. He tapped a few commands, bringing up a detailed map of the galaxy, showing their exact location as they neared the Council's space. He could almost hear the hum of the engines beneath his feet, the slow but steady march of humanity toward its place on the galactic stage. Behind him, Lieutenant Harper glanced nervously at the crew. The tension among them was thick, the uncertainty hanging in the air like a heavy fog. No one knew what awaited them. The Galactic Council had never faced a force like humanity before, and the Council's response to their arrival was still unknown. But there was one thing they all knew: this was humanity's moment. Just as the tension was about to reach its peak, the calm voice of the ship's communications officer came through the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission. It's from the Galactic Council." Anderson's hand hovered over the console, and he turned toward the communication terminal. "Put it through." The screen flickered for a moment before a figure appeared, his features sharp and reptilian, standing tall in a darkened room. The figure was unmistakable: Lord Seleth, the leader of the Galactic Council. His golden eyes glowed with an intense, calculating gaze as he addressed the camera. "Human Commander, we are aware of your ship's approach. You have violated our space without authorization. This is your final warning. Stand down and return to Earth, or face the consequences." The crew held their breath as Anderson's eyes narrowed. His hand clenched into a fist, but his voice remained calm as he spoke. "We are not here to negotiate, Lord Seleth. Humanity's time has come. We've fought for too long to remain forgotten. This is our galaxy now. Your council has made a grave mistake in underestimating us." There was a brief pause as the tension in the air seemed to grow heavier. Lord Seleth's expression remained unreadable. "You speak as if your people are ready for what lies ahead. I warn you, Earth is no match for the combined forces of the Galactic Council. You will be crushed." Anderson's response was chillingly calm. "Then prepare to face the full might of humanity. We are ready." The screen went dark as the transmission ended, leaving the bridge in absolute silence. A moment of stillness, followed by the heavy weight of reality settling on everyone aboard the ship. This was no longer about diplomacy. This was no longer about trying to coexist with the galaxy. This was war. Commander Anderson turned to face his crew, his eyes hard and determined. "Prepare yourselves. This is our fight now. We will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. No more retreating. No more running." The crew nodded, a mix of fear and resolve in their expressions. The weapons systems were powered up, the shields fully engaged. The crew knew what was at stake. There was no turning back now. Back in the Galactic Council's headquarters, the news of the human warship's arrival spread quickly. Panic had begun to seep into the ranks of the Council. For generations, the galaxy had lived in peace, but now a force was rising that could shatter everything. Lord Seleth paced across the chamber, his mind working furiously. How could they have allowed this to happen? Earth, a backwater planet, now had the power to challenge the galaxy itself. The humans had always been wild, unpredictable, but this was something else. "Lord Seleth," a voice called from behind him. It was his chief advisor, a sharp-eyed alien known as Sistal. "The fleets are preparing. Should we engage them before they reach the heart of the Council's space?" Seleth stopped pacing, his golden eyes narrowing as he thought for a moment. No, not yet. We need to understand their strength. If their ship is truly as powerful as they claim, rushing into battle would be foolish. We need to gather more information. Stahl hesitated. But my lord, if we wait too long. I know the risks, Stahl. Zilith snapped, his voice sharp. But I refuse to be caught off guard by these humans. We must act with caution. As Zilith prepared to send his own fleet into the galaxy's outer reaches, another transmission arrived. The human vessel was drawing closer. No longer could they afford the luxury of caution. The Galactic Council's fate was now inextricably tied to the humans, and the first real test of power was about to begin. Back aboard the human warship, Commander Anderson stood firm, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The distant stars glimmered like tiny diamonds, each one representing a future that humanity would carve out. There was no more room for weakness, no more room for fear. We're almost there, Harper said softly, her eyes scanning the redouts. The Council won't know what hit them. Anderson turned, his face impassive. They'll learn what happens when you push humanity too far. This is just the beginning. The warship continued its course toward the heart of the galaxy, where the most powerful beings in the universe were waiting. And soon, they would all learn the truth about Earth's greatest strength, its people. Humanity was no longer a forgotten planet. Now, they were a force to be reckoned with. The sound of the warship's engines hummed steadily beneath Commander Anderson's feet, a constant reminder of the course they had set. The stars stretched out like endless ribbons of light through the vast expanse of space, each one representing another challenge, another test humanity would face. And yet, for all their power and technology, the humans aboard the warship felt a quiet sense of anticipation, a sense that this was their moment. "Captain," Lieutenant Harper spoke, her voice cutting through the silence. "We've entered the edge of Council space. They'll be expecting us any moment." Anderson nodded, his eyes locked on the view screen. There in the distance, the first signs of the Council's defenses were visible. Vast fleets of ships, each one a symbol of their long-standing dominance in the galaxy. But Anderson's mind was already elsewhere. He had faced countless battles on Earth, but this was different. This was the moment when humanity would either rise or fall. "Prepare for any outcome," Anderson said, his voice cold but resolute. "We're going in with full force. No hesitation." The crew worked in silence, a well-oiled machine ready for the task ahead. Tactical officers adjusted the ship's systems, ensuring that everything was ready for what could be the most important battle in humanity's history. As they approached the heart of Galactic Council space, the tension on the bridge mounted, each passing second bringing them closer to their fate. "Enemy ships approaching," the communications officer announced suddenly, breaking the uneasy quiet. "It's a fleet. At least 50 ships, all heavily armed." Commander Anderson's lips curled into a grim smile. He had known this was coming. The Council wasn't about to let them waltz in without a fight, but what they didn't know was that humanity wasn't afraid of fighting back. "Lock on targeting systems," Anderson ordered, his voice steady despite the growing threat. "Prepare for battle." As the crew scrambled to make final preparations, the view screen flickered, showing the Council fleet in full view. They were massive ships, sleek and imposing, their weapons primed and ready. But Anderson was not intimidated. Humanity's ship, the Titan, was designed to fight, to survive, and most importantly, to win. "We've made contact with their lead ship," the communications officer reported. "They're sending a message." Anderson straightened. "Put it through." The screen flickered once more, and the image of Lord Seleth appeared again. His reptilian face was unreadable, his eyes glowing faintly with menace. "Commander Anderson." Zeleth's voice was cold, full of authority. "You have invaded our space. Return to Earth immediately, or we will be forced to take action." Anderson didn't flinch. He didn't blink. "You have no right to dictate terms to humanity anymore." "Zeleth," he replied, his voice a low growl, "we are not your subjects, nor are we your enemies. But if you force us into a fight, You will regret it. Zilith's expression remained unchanged. You are a foolish creature, Anderson. Your species is nothing but a blip in the galaxy's long history. We have crushed rebellions before, and we will do so again. Your efforts are pointless. Anderson took a slow, deliberate breath. He knew what was at stake, but his voice was unwavering. You underestimate us. You always have. And now, you will pay the price. The screen went dark once again, and the crew on the bridge exchanged uneasy glances. The silence was broken only by the rapid clicks of fingers on consoles and the quiet hum of the warship's engines. It was about to begin. All systems are ready, the tactical officer confirmed. Weapons are primed. Shields are at full strength. Commander Anderson nodded. Begin the assault. As soon as the words left his mouth, the warship erupted into action. The ship's massive weapons systems unleashed a barrage of energy blasts that streaked through the darkness of space, streaking toward the approaching Council fleet. The first few blasts hit their marks, sending shockwaves through the Lid Council ship, its shields flashing bright before failing under the onslaught. Direct hit, the weapons officer called out. Shield integrity on their lead ship is compromised. But the Council was not about to go down without a fight. Within moments, their fleet responded. Laser fire and missiles erupted from their ships, the sheer number of weapons enough to make the space around them seem like a storm of fire. The warship's shields flared brightly as it absorbed the first wave of attacks, but the impact was enough to rattle the entire ship. Shields at 70%, the tactical officer reported, his voice tinged with urgency. Push forward, Anderson ordered, his grip tightening on the command console. Do not stop. Fire at will. Another barrage of energy blasts shot from the Titan's weapons, this time aimed directly at the weak points of the Council fleet. The human warship had been built for this. Each shot, each blast, was a calculated strike, designed to destroy, to incapacitate. The Council ships didn't stand a chance. One by one, their shields fell, their ships taking hit after hit. But despite the damage, the Council fleet refused to break. More ships joined the fray, and the battle intensified. Yet for every ship that fell, humanity's warship took down 2 more. Anderson stood at the helm, his expression unchanging, but inside, he knew that this was the first step in proving humanity's strength. The Council would not be the galaxy's masters anymore. Humanity was here to claim its place. On the bridge, Lieutenant Harper stood by the console, her eyes wide, as she watched the destruction unfold. The fleet of Council ships had underestimated them. She had no idea how many ships they had destroyed already, but there was no doubt. This was far beyond what anyone had anticipated. They're retreating, the communications officer exclaimed, his voice tinged with disbelief. The Council ships are pulling back. They're abandoning the battle. Anderson's eyes narrowed. It's not over yet. They may retreat, but they'll be back. And next time, we'll be ready. The human warship remained in position, hovering in the cold expanse of space, its weapons still warm from the battle. The screen displayed the remnants of the once mighty Council fleet, now broken and battered. Humanity had struck a blow that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. As the warship's engines powered down to a quiet hum, Commander Anderson took a deep breath. He knew this was just the beginning. The Council would regroup, prepare, and come again. But humanity would stand strong, as it always had. They had sent a message to the galaxy. Earth was no longer a forgotten planet, a small speck on the map. Humanity had arrived, and they would not be silenced. The battle was over for now, but the war had just begun. The warship's lights flickered briefly, but the hum of its powerful engines never ceased, resonating like a pulse deep in the heart of the ship. Commander Anderson stood in front of the bridge's massive view screen. His eyes narrowed as he watched the remnants of the once mighty Council fleet retreating into the distance. The damage they had inflicted was staggering, but Anderson knew better than to let his guard down. This victory, though significant, was merely the opening chapter of a far more dangerous story. The galaxy would not simply bow to humanity's might. No, the real battle was only just beginning. "Lieutenant Harper," Anderson called out, his voice as steady as the warship's engines. "Report on our status." Harper glanced up from her console, her expression tense. "We've taken some hits, Commander. Shields are at 60%, and we've sustained some minor structural damage. But nothing we can't repair. More concerning, though, is the damage to our communication systems. We lost contact with Earth's command center right after the battle started." Anderson's jaw tightened. Losing contact was the last thing they needed. In this war, humanity had no allies. They had to rely on their own strength, their own ingenuity. But if they couldn't even communicate with Earth's command center, their entire mission could be compromised. "Get those systems back online," Anderson ordered, his voice sharp. "We need to be able to coordinate with Earth and make sure we're not missing any more incoming threats." As Harper worked furiously at her console, Anderson turned his attention back to the view screen. The once proud Council ships were retreating, but Anderson knew this wasn't over. The galaxy's most powerful empire had just been forced into a temporary retreat, but they were already regrouping, preparing for their next move. And when they returned, they would come with a fury that humanity had never faced before. "They won't give up that easily," Anderson muttered to himself. "Commander," a voice broke through his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Park, one of the ship's tactical officers. "We've detected new ships on the horizon. Multiple signals, and they're headed our way." Anderson's heart skipped a beat, just as he had feared. The Council wasn't done. They were coming for humanity, and they would be prepared this time. He needed to act fast. "Prepare for battle," Anderson ordered without hesitation. "We're not running. We're standing our ground." The crew sprang into action, moving with a purpose that only came from the years of training and the desperate need to survive. Anderson's mind raced, calculating their next move, but it was clear that their current position was no longer tenable. The Council would bring overwhelming numbers, far more than humanity's warship could handle. They would need reinforcements, and fast. "Lieutenant Harper, I need a priority message sent to Earth," Anderson commanded. "Tell them we need reinforcements now. We can't hold out much longer against this many ships." Harper nodded and began typing rapidly on her console. "Message sent, Commander. Earth's command should receive it shortly." "Good," Anderson replied. He turned to face his crew. "Everyone, listen up. We're in the fight of our lives. The Council has underestimated us once again, but they won't make that mistake a third time. Our objective is clear. We hold this position, no matter what." As he spoke, Anderson's gaze shifted to the view screen once again. The approaching ships were coming in fast, their dark silhouettes becoming clearer as they drew closer. There had to be at least 50 of them, all heavily armed, all prepared for war. "We can't let them regroup," Anderson continued, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "We hold the line until help arrives. No one gets through." The crew nodded in agreement, their expressions grim but resolute. They had already fought one battle and emerged victorious. But now, the true test of humanity's resolve was about to begin. The Council had learned a hard lesson today, but they were not the kind to back down easily. They would come with all their might, determined to crush humanity once and for all. "Enemy ships have entered range," Lieutenant Park called out, his voice tight with tension. "They're charging weapons. We have incoming fire. Brace for impact," Anderson shouted. The warship shuddered violently as the first wave of Council fire struck, shaking the entire vessel to its core. Sparks flew from consoles, and the lights flickered briefly as the ship's shields absorbed the brunt of the attack. Anderson's grip tightened on the command chair, his mind working swiftly. They had to push back, or they would be destroyed. "Return fire," he ordered, his voice steady. "Target their weak points and fire at will." The ship's weapon systems roared to life, energy blasts streaking toward the incoming Council fleet. The first few shots found their marks, and several enemy ships exploded in brilliant bursts of light. But there were far too many of them, and each blast sent another shockwave of pressure through the warship's hull. "We've lost shield integrity," Lieutenant Harper reported, her voice strained. "We're down to 30%. If we take another hit like that, we won't survive." "Keep fighting," Anderson barked, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his chest. The Titan was strong, but it wasn't invincible, and they were dangerously outnumbered. The warship fired again, hitting another Council ship, sending it into a spin before it detonated in a fiery explosion. The crew cheered briefly, but the victory was short-lived. More enemy ships poured in, their weapons flashing with deadly intent. Anderson's mind raced as the battle unfolded. He needed to hold out, just long enough for Earth to send reinforcements. If they could survive this onslaught, humanity would have a chance to truly challenge the galaxy's powers. But first, they had to make it through this hellish battle. Another wave of enemy ships coming in. Lieutenant Park warned. "They're coming in from the left flank. We can't cover both sides." "We don't need to," Anderson muttered under his breath. "We'll make them regret ever underestimating humanity." He gave the order to focus all fire on the left flank. The warship's guns swiveled, unleashing a storm of energy blasts on the incoming ships. Each hit brought another explosion, but still, the enemy pressed forward. The Titan's shields flickered dangerously low, the entire ship groaning with the strain of the battle. Anderson's mind never stopped calculating. Every shot, every move had to be precise. There was no room for error. Humanity's future, their very survival, depended on their ability to hold the line. The battle raged on, the sound of war filling the empty void of space, and still, Commander Anderson stood at the helm, unwavering. He knew that the Council's fleet would keep coming, relentless and unyielding. But humanity, too, was relentless, and they would fight to the last. "Prepare for the final push," Anderson said, his eyes narrowing in determination. "We'll give them a battle they'll never forget." The Titan groaned as it absorbed another barrage of enemy fire, the massive warship shuddering under the force. Sparks flew from various panels across the bridge, and the lights flickered erratically. Commander Anderson's knuckles were white as he gripped the edge of the command chair, his mind racing through options. The enemy fleet had grown, and their firepower seemed endless. His ship was strong, but even the Titan had its limits. "Status report," he barked, his voice sharp as ever. Lieutenant Harper quickly glanced at her screen. "Shields are at 15%, Commander. We've lost primary engines in sectors 4 and 5. Structural integrity is holding, but we can't take much more of this." Anderson's mind sharpened. They had been holding strong for over an hour, pushing back the Council's forces with every ounce of their strength, but the sheer number of enemy ships was overwhelming. For every one they destroyed, another two seemed to take its place. "We need to make a tactical retreat," Harper suggested, her voice full of concern. "If we pull back now, we might make it out with the crew intact." Anderson's jaw clenched. There was no room for retreat. Not now. Not after everything they had sacrificed to get this far. "No retreat. Not yet," he said firmly. "We fight. We hold. If we leave now, it'll be a victory for them. They'll think they've broken us, and that's the last thing we can afford." Harper didn't argue, but the uncertainty was evident in her eyes. Everyone on the bridge felt it. The weight of the situation. They were facing overwhelming odds, and yet Anderson's refusal to back down fueled something deep within them. "Get those engines back online, Harper," Anderson commanded, his voice relentless. "We're not done yet." With a quick nod, she began typing furiously at her console, calling in repairs from engineering. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Park kept his eyes glued to the view screen, tracking the movements of the enemy ships. "They'd formed a battle group, Commander," Park said, his voice tight. "It's a pincer formation. They're going to trap us unless we move. The situation was dire. The Council ships were closing in on both sides, slowly tightening their grip. If they didn't act quickly, the Titan would be caught in a deadly crossfire. Prepare to engage evasive maneuvers, Anderson ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. Fire at their weak points as we move. We can't afford to stand still. His crew responded instantly, their years of training kicking in. Weapons fired from the ship's port side, hitting one of the Council ships and sending it spinning into space. The Titan swerved sharply, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts that tore through the empty space where they had been moments before. But the maneuver took a toll on the warship. Another shudder reverberated through the hull as the ship's already weakened shields crackled under the pressure. They had bought themselves a few moments, but it wasn't enough. The enemy was adapting quickly, and their numbers were simply too great. More ships on the way, Park said, his voice grim. This is it. We can't outrun them forever. Anderson felt the weight of the situation press down on him, but his resolve did not waver. He knew that this was the moment, the pivotal point where everything could change. Humanity had fought for its survival time and again, and now was no different. It wasn't just a warship they were fighting for. It was the very future of Earth. He turned to the communications console, where Harper was still working, her brow furrowed with concentration. Harper, Anderson said, is the message to Earth still sending? Harper didn't look up from her work. Yes, Commander. It's been sent, but there's still no response. The communication relay is down, and we're still cut off. Anderson cursed under his breath. The situation was growing more desperate by the minute, and Earth's response was crucial. The reinforcements they so desperately needed weren't arriving. At least not yet. We can't just sit here waiting, he said, more to himself than to anyone else. We need to take the fight to them. His eyes flashed with determination as he formulated a plan. They couldn't rely on Earth's help. If they were going to survive, it had to come from within. Park, Anderson said, turning to his tactical officer, I want you to focus all our fire on their command ship. If we can take down their leader, the rest of them might scatter. Park hesitated, eyes flickering to the view screen. Commander, it's heavily shielded. Even with everything we've got, it might not be enough. We don't have a choice, Anderson replied firmly. We make our own fate. Park nodded grimly, and the crew set to work. The Titan's weapons shifted, focusing all energy on the massive Council flagship at the heart of the enemy formation. They fired with everything they had, the ship's cannons roaring to life as powerful energy beams tore through the void, aiming directly for the flagship's shields. The first few shots ricocheted off its shields, but the Titan's relentless barrage seemed to chip away at the enemy's defenses. A direct hit scored against the flagship's port side, and the enemy ship shuddered violently. We're making a dent, Park called out, his voice rising with a spark of hope. Keep it up. But even as the Titan pressed forward, the enemy responded. The Council flagship unleashed a massive counterattack, energy blasts flashing through the void like deadly thunder. The Titan's shields flared brightly, absorbing most of the damage, but it wasn't enough. One of the blasts slipped through, and the warship groaned under the strain, throwing crew members off balance. Shields are at critical levels, Harper shouted. We've lost more systems. Navigation and weapons are offline. Anderson gritted his teeth, refusing to let his resolve crumble. Keep firing. We're not backing down. But as the Titan continued its assault, a new series of ships appeared from the edge of the battle. Reinforcements? No, it was worse. The signal was unmistakable. More Council forces, this time with a much larger presence. A flood of enemy ships entered the fray, surrounding the Titan on all sides. Their numbers were now overwhelming. Anderson's heart sank as the true scale of the battle became clear. They had no hope of holding out much longer. Their only chance was to take down the Council flagship, and fast. Commander, Lieutenant Park said, his voice heavy with the weight of the situation. They're closing in. If we don't make a move now, we'll be surrounded. Anderson's mind raced. The odds were impossible, but he would never give up. Not now. Not when humanity's future was on the line. We push forward, he said, his voice unwavering. For Earth. For humanity. And with that, the Titan's guns fired again, targeting the flagship as the battle for survival raged on.